Thanks for joining us and taking a look inside Kansas politics. I'm Denisha Richard. I wanted to welcome you in. This is a show that will highlight issues that affect you, Kansans. We want to give a platform to those who may otherwise be unheard. We want to speak with elected officials as if they are our friends, all while still holding them accountable. I hope that you will continue to join me on this journey every single week. Well, let's go ahead and start off this morning with a group who says they are misunderstood, Black Republicans. I spoke with a few prominent Black Republicans. Here's a look at life and politics through their eyes. We have Willie Dove joining us today. We also have Denidre Herbert and Michael Austin. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You know, the conversation, Black and Republican, is so complicated. Very complicated. And I know you guys have a lot to say about that. Willie, let's start with you. When people hear that you are Black and Republican, what's their reaction?
I can't believe it. Why are you a Republican? And I say because they're the ones that I feel closest to in my values. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a stance that we all can have a part in our government, yet a lot of Blacks feel that that's the opposite party, that's the Democratic Party. And it's not the Democratic Party. It's the Republican Party that I feel the closest to, that I can relate to.
Well, I was speaking with one of your colleagues earlier last week, and he mentioned something that a lot of people may not think about, that Black people are historically conservative and that they were historically Republican. Correct, yes. And that the Democratic Party doesn't do much for them. Denidre, can you expand on that and tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on the historical link between Blacks and Republicans?
Well, in Kansas, there's a really strong link. I think one part that's lost in history that I know Michael and I have kind of talked about is the Exodusters movement. 40,000 people right after Reconstruction moved in mass migration to Kansas, Oklahoma, and Colorado, and 26,000 of them ended up in Kansas. That's how we have Nicodemus. Republicans helped that movement. John J. Ingalls, a Kansas senator, tried to appropriate funding to migrate people from the South to Kansas in the 1870s. I think our Kansas governor at the time, St. John, was very welcoming, and they wanted to come to Kansas because of John Brown and because of our fight to enter the Union as a free state. And so it is baffling to me that anybody who is a Black person in Kansas and knows our history is a Democrat. I don't know why you would choose them when you know that this state was born on Republican values. Kansas exists because, I mean, how can you be a Democrat? When you know the history? How can you?
Well, you know, there's a lot of misunderstandings about Black people who are Republican. And Michael, I want you to tell me a little bit more about some of those misunderstandings. How do you think Black people in the Republican Party are misunderstood?
Well, I would say to be an open Black Republican, or at least just an open Black conservative, is to be a person that's met with animosity, disdain, sometimes even contempt. And I would say it's not because they may, have a favorable view of the Constitution, or they're, Second Amendment proponent or anything like that. It's because I think what makes a Black conservative is a Black American who believes that the victim mentality is not an essential part of their life.
I want to hear from each of you about what you think people should know about who you are as a Black Republican. Willie, let's go ahead and start with you.
Thank you very much. I think that I would like people to know that as a Black Republican, that my views are the same as many other people's views. And that means that Black Republicans are not victims. We are individuals that all we want is a fighting chance to get in the room, to have a say as to where those jobs are coming from and how we can attain those jobs. Many of our individuals who are contractors, they never get in the room to bid on these contracts that are awarded to big business that we're kept from getting that done.
Denidre?
So I'm a Republican in part because it seems like white liberals, in particular white liberal suburban women, I'm sorry to call them out, spend a lot of time talking about how I need their help. I can't find the DMV and get an ID, so we have to strike down voter ID laws. They don't think I can do it on my own, and I don't need their help. And they have a hero complex that is disgusting to me. And that's one of the main reasons I'm a Republican. Republicans look at me and think, she can do this. And I think they're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add on to that fact, I don't think, well, let me backtrack a bit. We all have failings. We all make mistakes. But a Republican, and particularly a black Republican, believes that those mistakes and those failings aren't someone else's burden, right? They fall on you. Now, that's not to say there isn't racism in the world. There most certainly still is, and still in this country. But we're so fortunate to live in a country and a year, 2022, where we can largely say that we are in control of the choices that we make and the consequences that come with it.
Do you feel accepted by your GOP counterparts, your white GOP counterparts? Let's start there.
I would say so, yes. Absolutely. I've been in a situation where I was, I guess, one of the first black Republicans that was elected at the State House in District 39. And I got a great reception from individuals that were very welcoming, and they wanted to take me through the State House and show me things that were going on and how we could make a change together.
I would say that yes, for the most part, but I will say I do believe I had to work a little harder to get to the inner circle than probably, and that might just be my perception. But I think people assume if you have pigment that you are automatically a Democrat. So when you show up at a Republican event, they kind of look at you wary, but they give you a chance, and that's all I'm asking for.
Go ahead.
I would say yes, unequivocally. I ran for statewide office, and I don't know if you know this, but there hasn't been an African American who won statewide office since Reconstruction. And yet, despite running for that office and traveling all across the state, all four corners, I was met with warmth, cookies, hugs, high fives. Unequivocally, you know, I think people saw that as a breath of fresh air and an idea of true diversity, right? Not just of skin color, but also, you know, of thought as well.
All right, great thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we also talked about whether or not they disagree with any of the policies heavily backed by Republicans, like banning critical race theory. Well, Denidre mentioned that she approves with virtually every part of the Republican platform. We'll be right back.
Oh, the choices we have. More, less, somewhere in the middle. Then that's it. Small does not grow and large you can't whittle. But Cox Internet plans you can change anytime. You can easily adjust if you're so inclined. Start with Internet, add TV, maybe home automation when you're ready. If you want a lot of services or just a bit, with Cox you don't have to commit. Get Cox Internet for the everyday low price of $49.99.
What happens here matters here. That's why the 27 News Capitol Bureau brings the important stories home to you like no one else can.
Let's go live to the State House.
Here's Capitol Bureau reporter Denisha Richard.
It's been a long road, but the governor has finally signed the bill into law today.
Because decisions made here impact you, your family, and your home. We have your Capitol News covered.
Right now, there's a big political divide on this issue.
The 27 News Capitol Bureau, working for you.
I was not a cancer mom until I was a cancer mom. You don't know until it's you. It can happen to anybody at any point.
We believe in the mission at St. Jude. We've experienced it. There's so many things that St. Jude does outside of treat cancer.
The research is shared. What they're doing matters to so many people. This entire facility is making changes for children. I may not have a son if it weren't for St. Jude, and we would have a totally different life right now. We need St. Jude. We all need St. Jude.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. A former law enforcement officer turned lawyer now has his eyes on the Kansas Attorney General seat. His main focus, public safety, not politics. Joining me today is Democratic AG candidate Chris Mann. Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so public safety over politics, that has really been your main motto as you campaign for the Attorney General seat. Why do you think that is so important, especially in today's climate?
Look, I think people are tired of politicians telling them what to do. And I think they want someone who's just going to do the job. And that's exactly what I want to do as Attorney General, make sure that we're protecting the people of Kansas.
Well, you talk about doing the job. You've actually done a lot of jobs throughout your career. You started off as a law enforcement officer. You went on to becoming an attorney. You served on different boards. Tell me about your experience as a law enforcement officer and how that has prepared you for this prospective role of Attorney General.
So my first job was a police officer in Lawrence. I was 21 years old. I was still in college. In fact, that's how I paid my way through college, was as a police officer. And I loved that job, loved serving my community. It was truly a calling for me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, that ended after a drunk driver hit me while I was on a car stop, and I was injured and had to leave the force.
Right, but you talk about your path, and that incident actually led you on to another path into your journey of where you are today, right? Becoming an attorney and also running for Attorney General.
Absolutely. While I healed up from the crash, I was able to find a way to turn that pain into purpose to still help victims of crime, just in the courtroom instead. So went back to law school. I started prosecuting in Wyandotte County, everything from traffic tickets to murder, off to the state where I prosecuted white-collar criminals preying on the elderly. And in the past few years, I've worked with victims of drunk driving.
Okay, so now Kansans know a little bit about the man, Chris Mann, but now we want to know a little bit more about your policies. So, of course, it's been a topic that everyone has been talking about since the primary. Abortion rights. Kansans want to know where you stand on abortion rights.
I think politicians have gotten far too comfortable telling people what to do with their personal lives. And I don't think that people in Kansas want a politician from Topeka in their doctor's office with them.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about your Republican opponent. So you talk a lot about your opponent, Kobach. Actually, on your Facebook page, you have a statement that says you don't only want Kobach to lose, you want him to, quote, end his career. Why do you want him to end his career? Do you think he does not have a place in politics? What's your stance on that?
Yeah, so people have seen my opponent in action before as Secretary of State when he pushed unconstitutional policies that then became law. Then he defended those policies and cost our state millions of dollars. And I think the people of Kansas are tired of that kind of politics. I think they want someone who's not going to follow a political agenda, but is actually going to get in there and do the job. My opponent has said numerous times in public that he wants to hire some political friends of his to help him pursue his political agenda, which is federal lawsuits. What I want to do is focus right here on the people of Kansas, helping folks to be safe in their communities.
You talk a lot about empowering the relationship between Kansans and law enforcement. An evaluation of policing in Kansas, it actually shows that there were over 1,800 civilian complaints against police misconduct. That was from 2016 to this year. And only 12% of those rather, they were ruled in favor of the civilians that made those complaints. So what Kansans really want to know, it leads them to believe that right now there is a lack of accountability by police. And I know you have a relationship with law enforcement in Kansas. So what would you do for the people? That's what they want to know. How can you make sure that Kansans are protected as well as law enforcement?
Anyone can file a complaint against law enforcement, but here's what I can tell you. I've been a police officer and been a prosecutor, and the vast majority of officers that are out there are doing an amazing and difficult job protecting the people of Kansas. And I know, having served with a lot of those officers, that they don't want to see bad apples in the mix either, because when there's a bad officer who's breaking the rules and causing difficulty in a community, it makes all of law enforcement, it brings down that credibility and that trust. And that's what law enforcement relies on to do the job that they do. I think that certainly we need to have transparency in law enforcement. We need to make sure that that bad actors, no matter who they are held accountable. But again, I have to say that the vast majority of officers are doing an amazing job and deserve our support.
All right, so what final words do you have for Kansans out there who really want to know who the man is, Mr. Chris Mann? What words do you have for Kansans?
Absolutely. This race comes down to a very clear choice. It's public safety or politics. That's your choice. I've spent my entire career dedicated to public service, and I want to bring that dedication to the Attorney General's office to make sure that we're serving all of the people of Kansas. My opponent wants to focus on his own political agenda, but we all know this office is much bigger than one man's political agenda. We need someone who's going to listen to Kansans, who's going to put in the work and wake up every morning doing his very best to help the people of Kansas. And that's exactly what I'll do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your words and thank you for your time. Chris Mann, the Democratic Attorney General candidate for the state of Kansas. We'll be right back.
It's showtime!
Too much for me to handle. It's so good.
Weekdays at 11 on 27 KSNT. 27 News has your morning news covered.
Good morning, Northeast Kansas, and thank you for joining us.
Working for you, keeping you up to date on overnight news and developing stories. 27 News, where top newsmakers break stories and where you can get your start the day forecast.
Here's a look at what you can expect for temperatures later on today.
Join Tiffany Littler and meteorologist Becky Taylor weekday mornings for 27 News, working for you.
The best of his generation versus the best of all time. Mahomes, Brady, Chiefs, Bucks. Made for Sunday night. On NBC and streaming on Peacock.
Last fall's #1 new show is back.
I need to find my family.
We are in trouble.
We've come this far, and we're not going to stop until we make it out of here.
I just got an urgent case. We're essentially stealing an aircraft.
A simple task for someone with your training and experience.
You two will most likely do something that results in laws getting broken.
Don't worry, we got this.
Teamwork makes the dream work, baby.
Last week, it's a gunshot. This week, it's a plane crash. What's next? You're really enjoying this, aren't you?
Don't know what you're talking about.
Sundays at 11:30 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back. In State House news, a proposed property tax plan hopes to help Kansas homeowners put millions of dollars back into their pockets. The reduction plan was introduced by Democrats earlier in the week, and here's what they say it will do. Legislators would introduce a constitutional amendment that lowers the assessment level for homes from 11.5% to 9%. The plan will also raise residential property exemptions from the statewide school levy to $65,000. While Democrats say this plan will help save homeowners in the state about $694 million per year. It will be officially introduced at a committee meeting before the 2023 legislative session. Another Republican is endorsing Laura Kelly for governor. Former Governor Mike Hayden says he applauds Laura Kelly's middle ground approach to politics. Former Republican Governor Bill Graves also endorsed Kelly. Meanwhile, her opponent Derek Schmidt is also gaining across the party line as well. Democrat and Cherokee County Sheriff David Groves endorses Schmidt, saying his commitment to law enforcement is why he has his vote. A new and improved form will make voter online registration a little bit easier. The Kansas Secretary of State's office says a new website promotes better security and will be easier to access on mobile devices. Voters can visit votekansas.gov, where there they can click register to vote to access that form. We'll be right back.
The Storm Track WeatherCam Network on 27 News. More cameras covering your community, providing a live, exclusive look at weather as it rolls across northeast Kansas.
We're watching the storms building in from the south and southwest.
Working for you to provide advanced warning of changing conditions. The Storm Track WeatherCam Network. Available live to you anytime, online and on the 27 News mobile app. Sponsored by Prairie Band Casino and Resort.
Can you handle the heat? Wing Fling is back for the 7th year, December 17th at Stormont Vale Event Center. Loosen those belts and get ready for all-you-can-eat wings from all of your favorite wing joints. There will be a wing eating contest and Topeka's longest beer pong table. Topeka, you decide who will win the title Wing Fling King. Tickets to start at $20 during our pre-sale and $25 in advance. Purchase tickets at the Sky Zone box office or Ticketmaster.com. Sponsored by B100 and Fox 43 KTMJ.
I was not a cancer mom until I was a cancer mom. You don't know until it's you. It can happen to anybody at any point.
We believe in the mission at St. Jude. We've experienced it. There's so many things that St. Jude does outside of treat cancer.
The research is shared. What they're doing matters to so many people. This entire facility is making changes for children. I may not have a son if it weren't for St. Jude, and we would have a totally different life right now. We need St. Jude. We all need St. Jude.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. A recent survey shows that 51% of Kansans are thinking most about the economy as they head to the polls come November. That's actually before other topics like abortion access, education, and immigration. In fact, the economy has been a large talking point for the gubernatorial candidates, Governor Laura Kelly and Derek Schmidt. Well, in today's roundtable, we will take a look at the Kansas economy and how the messages may influence Kansas voters. Joining me today is a panel of experts on the topic. We've got Rebecca Chung with the Kansas Capitol Bureau. We also have Emporia State University political professor Michael Smith and University of Kansas economic professor Donna Ginther. Thanks for joining us today. Well, 51%, that's a large number, especially for all of the other topics that many Kansans are thinking about today as we head up to the general election. Donna, let's start with you. Do you think that that stat is pretty surprising, that that's what Kansans are thinking about most?
It's not surprising at all because of inflation. This is a generational change in the rate of inflation. We haven't experienced inflation since the 1980s, and people are paying higher prices for practically everything.
And it's something that hits you in the pocketbook at the gas pump or at the grocery store. And groceries and gas are a little different because gas prices have actually come back down. Groceries have not. And probably even if inflation comes under control, they're not going to drop back to the old prices. So, you know, we get all wrapped up in the culture war issues like abortion rights and such, and those are certainly important, but James Carville is still right. It's the economy, stupid.
Now, actually, Governor Laura Kelly has been talking about the economic growth in the state. She actually touted the growth of the economy in the state just recently. Here's what she had to say. It's pretty straightforward.
I don't think an ineffective leader wins trophy after trophy for economic development.
Recognize. When you say you better recognize, you don't say that unless you are quite sure of what you were talking about. Well, Governor Laura Kelly has really talked mostly about the economy and the growth of the economy during her campaign season. But even though she's saying all of these achievements that she's accomplished during her session, do you think the state of the economy is in a right state right now here in Kansas? What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, Denisha, I would have to say that you have the governor kind of boasting these accomplishments very often when it comes to the economy, but you also see the Republican side pushing back. And so I don't think they agree with the governor's statements that she is making. When you look at that number, they are recognizing maybe jobs that are not necessarily here right now, but are just being promised through contracts that we're signing with these businesses that are coming here. Another thing that they were pointing out is the labor numbers right now. And when we look at Kansas's labor numbers compared to the growth of on the national average, which is about 97.6%, this was back in June. Looking at those numbers, Kansas has only recovered about 79.7% of the jobs at that time.
And there's a reason for that. It's called the Great Resignation. In Kansas, we had about 35,000 people retire in 2020, 2021, and that's where we're at in terms of fewer jobs, fewer employment. So we had a situation across the country where the baby boom left the building all at once. And so, we had lots of retirements, and Kansas is an older workforce, and so I don't think those workers are going to come back. So we are really at full employment right now.
I really want to touch on the student loan forgiveness program that Biden has instituted. We've recently learned that several states are actually suing Biden for this program that will forgive student loans for people across the country, including people who borrowed here in the state of Kansas. Is that a good or a bad thing that Kansas is hopping on this lawsuit to sue Biden to forgive these student loans? What do you think?
Well, this is really, I think, politicizing this issue very much. Back in the day, we folks that are a generation or two older remember when professionals, particularly those who happen to be white, often voted heavily Republican. And it's totally flipped. And for white working class voters, the Republican Party is the go-to party. And professionals are increasingly trending toward the Democratic Party. This is a class war. This is an attempt to reach out to resentful working class voters.
And let's think about why student debt has gone up in this country. It's because state governments have not spent as much on higher education. And that means that the cost of higher education is being borne by the students. And if those students have a lot of debt, they're less likely to get married, they're less likely to buy houses, they're less likely to have a family, all of things that contribute to the growth of the Kansas economy. So in some ways, student debt is holding the whole U.S. economy back and a whole generation back.
Lots of good points. We could talk about the economy for hours and hours and hours, right? Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Very good topics that we talked about. We will be here talking about the economy, talking about lots of things every single week. That was your look inside Kansas politics. You caught our first show ever, but we will be right here next week, same time, same place. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next Sunday.